Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I walked through the towering glass doors of Aspen Ridge Mountain Resort snowflakes, still clinging to my casual jacket. The grand lobby sparkled with Christmas magic. A 30-foot evergreen dominated the center, draped in golden lights and crystal ornaments. Garlands of pine and holly wound around marble columns, while the scent of cinnamon and cedar filled the air. Then I heard the shouting. "Get us the owner right now!" A familiar voice boomed across the polished floors. My blood turned to ice. There, beside the mahogany registration desk, stood my father, Harold Roosevelt, in his expensive wool coat, jabbing his finger at our manager, Sarah. "How dare you allow such inappropriate guests in a resort of this caliber?" My mother, Margaret, snapped, her shrill tone echoing off the vaulted ceiling. They were complaining about me, their own son. And they had absolutely no idea who I was. 5 years. 5 long years since I had last seen Harold and Margaret Roosevelt, and they looked exactly the same. Dad still wore that self-important scowl, his silver hair perfectly styled, his posture radiating the arrogance of old money. Mom remained as sharp-tongued as ever, her designer handbag clutched like a weapon, her lips pursed in permanent disapproval. But I had changed. Everything about me had changed. 5 years ago, I weighed 290 pounds. I lived in their basement, surrounded by failed business plans and empty pizza boxes. Every morning, I would climb those creaky wooden stairs to face another day of their disappointment. Harold would look at me over his morning newspaper and shake his head. "Duke, you're an embarrassment to the Roosevelt name," he would say, never lowering the paper. "No respectable family would want to associate with us while you look like that." Margaret was worse. She would hide my existence during dinner parties, telling guests I was traveling for business, when I was actually upstairs listening to the laughter and clinking glasses below. When country club friends asked about their children, she would mention my sister Catherine in medical school, but never me. "We only have one child," she would say when pressed. "Duke isn't ready for public presentation yet." The breaking point came during their annual Christmas party. 200 of their closest friends filled our family estate, and I had been explicitly forbidden from leaving the basement. But I was hungry, and I thought I could slip into the kitchen unnoticed. I was wrong. Harold found me making a sandwich. His face turned crimson with rage. "What are you doing up here?" he hissed, grabbing my arm so hard it bruised. "Do you want to humiliate us in front of everyone?" "I just wanted something to eat, Dad," I whispered, but he was already dragging me toward the basement door. "You are dead to us." Margaret had said that night, her voice cold as the December wind outside. "Dead to us until you become someone worthy of our name. Until you prove you deserve to be called our son." Those words echoed in my mind as I watched them now, 5 years later, in the lobby of my own resort. They truly did not recognize me. The transformation was that complete. I had lost 120 pounds through relentless discipline and exercise. Where once I had soft, rounded features, I now carried the lean build of someone who climbed mountains for pleasure. My hair was no longer the unkempt mess of a defeated man, but styled with the confidence of success. Most importantly, I carried myself differently. Gone was the slouched posture of shame, replaced by the straight spine of someone who had built something remarkable. From across the marble expanse, I watched them terrorize our front desk clerk, Emma. She was only 19, working her way through college, and their verbal assault was making her hands shake as she tried to process their demands. "This young lady clearly doesn't understand who we are," Harold was saying to Sarah, our manager. "We are Harold and Margaret Roosevelt of the Connecticut Roosevelts. We expect immediate resolution to this problem." The problem, of course, was me. Standing there in jeans and a casual jacket, I apparently did not meet their standards for the clientele of a luxury mountain resort. The irony was suffocating. Sarah, to her credit, remained professionally calm. "Sir, I understand your concerns, but all of our guests have equal rights to enjoy the resort facilities." Equal rights. Margaret's voice climbed higher. "We paid $15,000 for the Christmas package. We should not have to share space with whatever discount customer wandered in off the street." I felt the familiar burn of their disapproval, the same sensation that had driven me to disappear 5 years ago. But now it was mixed with something else. Anger. Not just at their treatment of me, but at how they were treating Emma and Sarah. These were good people, hard-working people who deserved respect. My assistant Brad appeared at my elbow, his tablet in hand. "Mr. Roosevelt," he said quietly, "we have a situation. Jonathan Walsh just arrived." My stomach dropped. Walsh was the most influential food critic in the country, known for surprise visits that could make or break a resort's reputation. His reviews in Luxury Travel Weekly were followed religiously by the wealthy elite who comprised our primary customer base. "He's demanding immediate accommodation," Brad continued. "Says he's here for an unannounced review." I glanced back at my parents, who were now berating Emma for her insolence in suggesting they lower their voices. The timing could not have been worse. My resort's reputation hung in the balance, and my biological family was creating exactly the kind of scene that could destroy everything I had built. "Handle Walsh personally," I told Brad. "Presidential suite, full amenities, whatever he needs. And Brad, not a word about who I am." As Brad hurried away, I turned back to the confrontation. Margaret had now moved closer to Emma, her voice dripping with condescension. "Little girl, do you have any idea who you are speaking to? My husband serves on the boards of 3 major corporations. We could have you fired with a single phone call." That was it. I started walking toward them. The situation exploded into chaos faster than I could have imagined. As I approached the registration desk, the front doors burst open, and our head chef Carlos rushed in his white coat, splattered with something that looked disturbingly like soot. "Sarah," he called out, his usual calm demeanor completely shattered. "We have an emergency in the kitchen. The main prep station caught fire. The Christmas Eve dinner for 200 guests. I don't know how we're going to manage it." My parents turned toward the commotion with the predatory interest of sharks sensing blood in the water. "A fire in the kitchen?" Harold said loudly. "What kind of establishment are you running here?" Before Sarah could respond, Margaret spotted something that caught her attention. Across the lobby, a woman in an elegant red dress was examining the jewelry display in our gift boutique. The woman wore a stunning diamond necklace that sparkled under the chandelier lights. "That necklace," Margaret said suddenly, her voice sharp with accusation. "I know that necklace. It belongs to Patricia Whitman from the country club. How did this woman get Patricia's jewelry?" She marched across the lobby with the determination of a general leading a charge. Harold followed, sensing drama. I watched in horror as my mother confronted the innocent guest. "Excuse me," Margaret said loudly, her voice carrying across the entire lobby. "That necklace you're wearing was stolen from my dear friend Patricia Whitman. I'm calling security immediately." The woman looked up in confusion. "I'm sorry, what this necklace belonged to my grandmother. I have the insurance papers right here in my purse." "Don't lie to me," Margaret snapped. "I've seen Patricia wear that exact piece dozens of times. Hotel security. This woman is wearing stolen jewelry." Other guests began to stare. The woman's face flushed red with embarrassment and anger. "How dare you accuse me of theft? I'll have you know I'm a federal judge, and this kind of harassment is completely unacceptable." Just then, as if the universe had decided to test every limit of my patience, the front doors opened again. This time it was a local news crew from Channel 7 arriving to film their annual Christmas at Colorado's Luxury Resorts segment. The cameraman immediately began filming, capturing Margaret's loud accusations, and the judge's indignant response. "Are we recording?" the reporter asked her cameraman. "This looks like a story developing right here." Brad reappeared at my side, his face pale. "Duke Walsh is getting impatient. He's asking about the disturbance in the lobby, and there's more bad news. The fire department is here about the kitchen incident. They might shut us down for the holiday." I felt the walls closing in. 5 years of building this resort, creating a place where people were treated with dignity and respect. And it was all about to crumble because my parents could not control their entitled behavior for 5 minutes. But it got worse. Emma, still shaken from my parents' earlier assault, was trying to help another guest when Margaret returned from her confrontation with the judge. "You," Margaret said, pointing an accusing finger at the young clerk. "I specifically told you to get your manager to remove that inappropriate guest." She gestured toward me. "Instead, you've allowed jewelry thieves to roam freely through the lobby. What kind of training do you people receive?" "Ma'am," Emma said softly, "I was helping another guest, and the woman you accused is actually a federal judge." She showed me her identification and the insurance papers for the necklace. "Don't talk back to me," Margaret shrieked, her voice carrying clearly to the news camera. "I demand to speak to the owner of this establishment immediately." Harold stepped up beside his wife. "My wife is absolutely correct. We've encountered nothing but incompetence since we arrived. First, you allow riffraff in the lobby." He gestured dismissively toward me. "Then you fail to address obvious criminal activity. We're considering legal action against this entire operation." The news reporter moved closer with her microphone, sensing a developing story. "Excuse me, sir, can you elaborate on your concerns about the resort's management?" Harold puffed up like a peacock, delighted to have an audience. "Harold Roosevelt, Connecticut Roosevelts. We've been loyal customers of luxury establishments for decades, and this resort falls far short of acceptable standards. The staff is insolent, the security non-existent, and the clientele questionable at best." I watched the reporter taking notes, the camera capturing every word. Jonathan Walsh had emerged from his suite and was observing the chaos from the mezzanine level, his own phone out, recording everything. My parents were systematically destroying my resort's reputation on live television, and they had no idea they were talking about their own son's business. Sarah approached me, her professionalism cracking under the strain. "Duke, I don't know what to do. Your parents are creating a scene that's being broadcast. Walsh is threatening to leave the kitchen. Crisis needs immediate attention. And now we have fire department inspectors demanding to speak with the owner." I looked around the lobby that I had designed with such care. Every detail reflected my vision of hospitality done right. The warm lighting, the comfortable seating areas, the art from local Colorado artists on the walls. This was supposed to be a place where people felt welcomed and valued regardless of their background or appearance. And then I watched my mother do something that changed everything. Emma was explaining resort policy to another guest when Margaret walked up behind her. Without warning, without any provocation beyond her own entitlement and rage, Margaret raised her hand and slapped Emma across the face. The sharp crack of the slap echoed through the lobby like a gunshot. Emma stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek, tears immediately springing to her eyes. The entire lobby fell silent except for the whir of the news camera capturing every second. "That is," Margaret said coldly, "is for your insolence. Perhaps now you'll understand the proper way to address your betters." I felt something snap inside me. Emma was not just an employee. She was the first person I had hired when I opened the resort. She was a hard-working college student who sent half her paycheck home to help her disabled mother. She had never been anything but kind, professional, and dedicated. And my mother had just assaulted her on camera. The time for hiding was over. The slap echoed in my mind like thunder. Emma stood frozen, her cheek bright red tears threatening to spill over her lower lashes. Around the lobby, guests stared in shock. The news camera captured everything, the red recording light, a constant reminder that this moment would be broadcast across Colorado. I knew Emma's story. When I first opened the resort 3 years ago, she was 17 and desperate for work. Her mother had been in a car accident that left her permanently disabled, and Emma was the sole provider for their small family. She worked 2 jobs while finishing high school, saving every penny for community college tuition. The day she interviewed with me, she wore a borrowed dress and shoes that were clearly too big. But her eyes held something I recognized: the determination of someone who had been knocked down by life and refused to stay there. I hired her on the spot, not because I needed another front desk clerk, but because I saw myself in her struggle. Now she stood there humiliated and hurt, while my mother smirked with satisfaction. Harold stepped up beside his wife. "Perhaps that will teach you some respect," he said loudly. "Service industry workers need to understand their place." The federal judge who had been accused of theft was now standing with several other guests, their faces showing a mixture of outrage and disgust. The news reporter moved closer, clearly recognizing that she had stumbled onto something much bigger than a holiday resort story. "Did you just witness an assault?" she asked one of the guests, who nodded vigorously. That woman struck a hotel employee for no reason. The judge said, her voice carrying the authority of the courtroom. "I'm a federal judge, and I've never seen such appalling behavior in a public establishment." Margaret turned toward the judge with renewed venom. "Oh, please. You're probably not even a real judge. First you steal jewelry, now you're impersonating a federal officer. Someone call the police and have this woman arrested." That was when Jonathan Walsh stepped forward. I had hoped to avoid his attention during this crisis, but there was no hiding from it now. The most powerful food critic in America had witnessed everything, and his expression was one of fascination rather than disgust. "Excuse me," Walsh said, approaching Harold with his phone still recording. "Jonathan Walsh, Luxury Travel Weekly. I'm here reviewing this resort, and I have to say, this is the most interesting customer behavior I've ever witnessed. Can you tell me what prompted you to strike that young employee?" Harold's chest swelled with pride at being recognized by a famous critic. "Mr. Walsh, of course we're familiar with your work. You'll want to note in your review that this establishment has serious staffing issues. That girl was completely insolent to my wife and myself. Sometimes firm correction is necessary." "Firm correction," Walsh repeated, his eyebrows rising. "You consider physical assault of service workers to be appropriate behavior?" Margaret jumped in before Harold could answer. "Mr. Walsh, you don't understand the full situation. We're Harold and Margaret Roosevelt, Connecticut Roosevelts. We've been patrons of luxury establishments worldwide. This resort has allowed completely inappropriate guests to mingle with paying customers." She gestured toward me. "That man there, for instance, is clearly not resort material." I felt every eye in the lobby turn toward me. The moment I had been dreading for 5 years had arrived. But as I looked at Emma's tear-stained face, at Sarah's desperate expression, at the news camera recording my parents' cruelty for the world to see, I realized something important. I was no longer the broken, defeated man who had lived in their basement. I was Duke Roosevelt, owner of a $25 million resort empire. I employed over 200 people who depended on me for their livelihoods. I had built something beautiful and meaningful, and I would not let my parents destroy it. Carlos appeared beside me, having dealt with the immediate kitchen crisis. "Boss," he whispered, "the fire damage is minor. We can handle tonight's dinner, but you need to know something else. Your parents have been making comments about the staff, racist comments about me, about Maria from housekeeping. The other employees are getting upset." My jaw tightened. It was one thing for my parents to attack me. I had survived their abuse for 32 years. But I would not let them terrorize the people who had become my real family. Brad returned with more bad news. Walsh is asking pointed questions about management's response to the situation. He wants to know if assault of employees is normally tolerated here. Duke, we need to do something before this gets any worse. The news reporter had moved closer, interviewing guests about what they had witnessed. The federal judge was giving a statement about the assault she had seen. Other guests were sharing their observations about my parents' behavior. "I've never seen such entitled, abusive conduct," one elderly gentleman was saying. "They've been terrorizing the staff since they arrived." "That poor girl," a woman added, nodding toward Emma. "All she did was try to explain hotel policy. No one deserves to be struck like that." Margaret overheard the interviews and became even more agitated. "Lies!" she shouted at the reporter. "These people are obviously plants. No legitimate guest would side with insolent staff over paying customers." Harold grabbed my arm as I started to move toward Emma. His grip was strong, aggressive, meant to intimidate. "You," he said loudly, "need to learn your place. This is a private matter between the Roosevelt family and resort management. Walk away before we have you arrested for harassment." The irony was overwhelming. My father was threatening to have me arrested for harassment in my own resort. The news camera captured his aggressive stance, his threatening posture towards someone he believed to be a random guest. "Harold, I said quietly, "you might want to remove your hand." "Don't tell me what to do." He snarled, his grip tightening. "Do you know who I am? I could buy and sell you 10 times over. I could have this entire resort shut down with one phone call." Around us, the situation continued to escalate. Margaret was now arguing with the fire department inspector, demanding to know why he was harassing a resort where she was paying top dollar for accommodations. Emma was being comforted by Sarah, but I could see the professional smile was gone from my manager's face, replaced by protective anger. Jonathan Walsh moved through the chaos like a predator, recording everything, taking notes, clearly recognizing that he had stumbled onto a story much bigger than a simple resort review. The breaking point came when Margaret spotted Emma receiving comfort from Sarah. "Oh no," Margaret said, striding across the marble floor with determination. "That girl struck me. I want her arrested immediately for assaulting a guest." The lie was so brazen, so completely contrary to what everyone had witnessed, that the entire lobby fell silent. The news camera swung toward Margaret, capturing her false accusation in high definition. "Ma'am," the federal judge said firmly, "I witnessed the entire incident. You struck that young woman unprovoked. There are dozens of witnesses and video evidence." Margaret's face twisted with rage. "You're all in on it. This entire resort is running some kind of scam. Harold, call the police. Call our lawyers. Have everyone here arrested." That was when Harold made his final mistake. Still gripping my arm, he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper that was still loud enough for Walsh's phone to capture. "Listen carefully," he said. "My family has connections you can't imagine. Judges, politicians, business leaders. We will destroy this place, and everyone in it, unless you people learn some respect. Starting with you walking away right now." I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had looked at me with disappointment and disgust for 32 years. The same voice that had told me I was dead to them. The same hands that had dragged me to the basement like a shameful secret. But now I saw something different in his expression. Fear. He was afraid of losing control, afraid of being challenged, afraid that his bluster and threats might not work on someone who did not know his reputation. "Harold," I said again, my voice carrying clearly across the lobby, "I'm going to ask you one more time to remove your hand. After that, I'll have security remove it for you." He laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Security. You think resort security is going to choose you over the Roosevelt family? We own places like this. We own people like you." The news reporter moved closer, sensing the climax of the story. Walsh had stopped taking notes and was now filming everything directly. Around the lobby, guests and staff formed a loose circle, everyone understanding that something significant was happening. Emma wiped her eyes and stepped forward, her voice stronger than I expected. "Sir," she said to Harold, "please let him go. He's just trying to help." Margaret whirled around. "Did I give you permission to speak after assaulting me? You have the nerve to interfere in private conversations." The lie was too much. The judge stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of her position. "Ma'am, stop this immediately. You assaulted that young woman, and now you're making false accusations. This behavior is completely unacceptable." "How dare you!" Margaret shrieked. "Harold, do something! These people are ganging up on us." Harold's grip on my arm tightened painfully. "All right," he said loudly. "Everyone back away. My wife and I are paying guests, and we will not tolerate this harassment any longer. Security, get over here and arrest this man for assault." The security guards approached slowly, clearly uncertain about the situation. They knew me, of course, but my parents were demanding action with such authority that confusion was natural. "Officers," Harold said, "arrest this man immediately for assault and harassment of hotel guests. We are Harold and Margaret Roosevelt, and we demand immediate action." I looked at Emma's red cheek, at Sarah's worried face, at the news camera capturing everything, at Jonathan Walsh recording what would likely become a viral video. My parents stood there in their expensive clothes, radiating the same entitled arrogance that had made my childhood a nightmare, demanding that I be arrested in my own resort. The moment had come. After 5 years of hiding, 5 years of building a new life, 5 years of being dead to the people who gave me birth, it was time for the truth. I gently removed Harold's hand from my arm, my movement calm but firm. The security guards stopped their approach, recognizing something in my posture that suggested this situation was more complex than it appeared. "Sarah," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the marble lobby, "would you please bring me the resort ownership documents from the safe?" Sarah's eyes widened with understanding, but she moved quickly toward the manager's office. The lobby fell silent except for the soft Christmas music still playing from hidden speakers. Jonathan Walsh lowered his phone slightly, his journalist instincts telling him something major was about to happen. The news reporter moved closer with her cameraman, sensing the climax of whatever story was unfolding. "What documents?" Harold demanded. "What kind of stalling tactic is this security I told you to arrest this man?" "Just wait," I said softly. "You demanded to speak to the owner. You're about to get your wish." Margaret's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "What are you talking about? Stop playing games. We want the owner of this resort here immediately to address the completely unacceptable service we've received." Emma stood beside me, her hand still pressed to her reddened cheek, watching with confusion. Carlos had emerged from the kitchen along with several other staff members who had heard about the confrontation. The entire resort seemed to hold its breath. Sarah returned with a leather portfolio, her hands trembling slightly as she handed it to me. "Here are the documents you requested, Mr. Roosevelt." The title hung in the air like a bell that had been rung. Mr. Roosevelt. Harold and Margaret both froze, their expressions shifting from confusion to a slow, dawning recognition. "Mr. Roosevelt," Margaret repeated slowly. "But that's our name." I opened the portfolio and removed the certificate of ownership, the business license, the property deed, all bearing the same name: Duke Roosevelt, owner and CEO, Aspen Ridge Mountain Resort. "Mom," I said quietly, the word feeling strange after 5 years of silence. "Dad, I am the owner you demanded to see." The silence stretched like a held breath. Harold's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, recognition, shock. Margaret's mouth opened and closed without sound, like a fish gasping for air. "That's impossible," Harold finally whispered. You were dead to you," I finished. "Yes, I remember. December 23rd, 2019. You told me I was dead to you until I became someone worthy of the Roosevelt name. The news camera captured everything. Walsh had his phone recording again, clearly understanding he was witnessing something extraordinary. Around the lobby, guests and staff watched in fascination as the family drama unfolded. Margaret found her voice first. "Duke, but you look so different. You're so thin and successful. How did you build all this?" I gestured around the lobby, taking in the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the stunning Christmas decorations. Hard work, determination, and most importantly, learning to treat people with dignity and respect. Harold was still staring, trying to reconcile the son he remembered with the man standing before him. "But the business plans you showed us were all failures. The restaurant idea, the consulting firm, the online ventures, they all lost money." "They did," I agreed. "Every one of them taught me something valuable. The restaurant failure taught me about customer service. The consulting disaster showed me the importance of market research. The online ventures revealed the power of authentic relationships." I walked slowly across the lobby toward them, my employees instinctively moving to flank me in a show of support. But mostly they taught me what kind of leader I never wanted to become. I learned that success built on the backs of broken people isn't success at all. Margaret's shock was giving way to calculation. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out how to spin this revelation to her advantage. "We always believed in you," she said suddenly, her voice taking on a warm, motherly tone that I had rarely heard growing up. "We knew you had potential. The tough love was just motivation to help you reach your true capabilities." The lie was so brazen that several people in the lobby actually gasped. Emma stepped forward, her young face showing more courage than I had seen from adults twice her age. "Ma'am, Ance," she said firmly, "just a few minutes ago you said he was inappropriate for this resort. You demanded he be removed." Margaret's face hardened. "You were struck for insolence once already, young lady. Don't make the same mistake twice." That was when Jonathan Walsh spoke up. "Actually, I have the entire conversation recorded. Would you like me to play it back, because I distinctly heard you say that your son was clearly not resort material and demanding his removal." Harold stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Mr. Walsh, you have to understand. We haven't seen Duke in 5 years. We didn't recognize him immediately. The shock of discovering our son owns this magnificent resort is overwhelming. Overwhelming enough to assault his employees," the federal judge interjected, "because I witnessed you strike that young woman for no reason other than your own entitlement." The circle was tightening around them. Margaret looked around the lobby, taking in the faces of guests and staff, all watching with expressions ranging from disgust to fascination. The news camera continued rolling, capturing every word for the evening broadcast. "Duke." Harold said, his voice taking on a pleading tone I had never heard before. "Surely you understand that this is all a misunderstanding? We're family. We need to discuss this privately, away from all these strangers." "Strangers," I repeated. "These people aren't strangers, Dad. They're my family, real family. The kind that doesn't require you to earn love through weight loss or financial success." Sarah stepped up beside me. "Duke gave me a chance when I was a single mother with no hotel management experience. He paid for my training, promoted me based on merit, and treats every employee like family." Carlos joined her. "When my daughter needed surgery last year, Duke paid the medical bills without being asked. No loan, no payback required. He just said family takes care of family." Emma, despite her red cheek and obvious emotional distress, found her voice again. "He put me through college. Full tuition books, even helped my mother with her medical expenses. All while telling me I earned it through hard work." One by one, my employees began sharing their stories. The busboy whose immigration papers Duke had helped expedite, the housekeeper whose son Duke mentored through high school, the maintenance worker whose gambling addiction Duke had helped him overcome by paying for counseling. With each story, Margaret and Harold looked more uncomfortable. This was not the narrative they wanted to construct. That's all very nice, Margaret said tersely. But we're talking about family obligations here. Duke, you disappeared without a word. We had no idea where you were or if you were even alive. We deserved better than abandonment. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Around the lobby, I could feel people holding their breath, waiting to see how I would respond to being blamed for my own exile. You're right, I said quietly. You did deserve better. You deserved a son who could handle your disappointment with grace. A son who could absorb your criticism without letting it destroy him. A son strong enough to earn your conditional love. Margaret's face brightened, thinking she had won the point. But I was never going to be that son, I continued. So I became something else. I became the kind of man who builds businesses that lift people up instead of tearing them down. The kind of leader who protects his employees instead of exploiting them. The kind of person who gives loyalty to those who earn it through character, not genetics. Harold's expression was darkening. Are you suggesting we were bad parents? I'm not suggesting anything, Dad. I'm stating facts. You made your love conditional on my meeting your standards. When I failed to meet them, you withdrew that love. It was your right as parents, and it was my responsibility to deal with the consequences. The news reporter moved closer with her microphone. Mr. Roosevelt, can you elaborate on what you mean by conditional love? Margaret stepped between us. This is a private family matter. Turn off that camera immediately. Actually, Walsh interjected, this is a public establishment, and your behavior has been quite public as well. The question of how resort ownership handles family drama is certainly relevant to my review. I looked at the camera, then at my parents, then at the employees who had become my chosen family. The moment felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing that once you jump, there's no going back. The kind of love I grew up with came with a price tag, I said to the reporter. Lose weight and we'll be proud of you. Make money and we'll introduce you to our friends. Be successful and you can be our son. But if you're struggling, if you're overweight, if your business plans fail, then you're an embarrassment. You're dead to us. Emma moved to stand directly beside me, her loyalty clear, despite having been assaulted by my mother minutes earlier. Sarah flanked my other side. Carlos and the other employees formed a supportive circle. These people, I continued, love me when I'm having a bad day. They celebrate my successes and support me through failures. They judge me by my character, not my bank account. That's the difference between family you're born into and family you choose. Margaret's composure finally cracked completely. How dare you lecture us about family? We provided for you. We gave you every advantage. Private schools, college, tuition, a home to live in. You gave me everything except what I actually needed, I replied. Acceptance, unconditional love. The security of knowing that my worth as a person wasn't dependent on meeting your expectations. Harold stepped forward aggressively. So this is revenge. You build this empire just to humiliate us in public. No, Dad. I built this empire because you taught me I had to earn love. So I learned to earn love from people who actually know how to give it. The moment crystallized around us. The Christmas music continued playing softly. The lobby lights cast warm glows on marble and crystal. The news camera rolled silently. And in the center of it all, a family confronted 5 years of silence and pain. Margaret looked around the lobby one more time, taking in the faces watching us. The camera recording everything, the employees standing loyally beside me. When she spoke again, her voice carried a tone I recognized from childhood, the cold calculation that preceded her most devastating attacks. Well, she said, I suppose this explains the quality of service we've received. When the owner associates with working-class employees as equal, standards inevitably suffer. The insult hit its target. Around me, I felt my employees stiffen with anger and hurt. These were good people, hard-working people who had poured their hearts into making this resort successful. They had become my real family, and my mother had just dismissed them as beneath her notice. Emma stepped forward, her young voice clear and strong. "Ma'am, with respect, I've worked in hospitality for 3 years, and I've never encountered guests who treated staff the way you have today." Margaret turned on her with renewed venom. "And I've never encountered such insolence from service workers. Duke, if you allow this girl to speak to paying guests this way, you'll destroy your reputation entirely." That was when she made her ultimate demand. "Choose," Margaret said, her voice carrying the same cold authority I remembered from childhood. "Choose right now between your real family and these employees who are just using you for money. Fire this insolent girl immediately, or we'll expose you as a fraud to everyone we know. We'll tell the world that Duke Roosevelt is so desperate for acceptance that he surrounds himself with people he pays to pretend they care about him." The ultimatum hung in the air like a blade. Around the lobby, everyone understood that this was the moment everything would be decided. My employees, my parents, the guests, the reporter Jonathan Walsh, all waiting to see what I would choose. Harold nodded approvingly. "Your mother is absolutely right. You can have a relationship with your family, or you can continue this charade of playing boss to the help. But you cannot have both." I looked at Emma's red cheek, then at Sarah's protective stance, then at Carlos and the others who had stood by me. I thought about the 5 years I had spent building something meaningful, creating a place where people were valued for who they were, not what they could provide. Then I looked at my parents, still radiating the same cold entitlement that had driven me away in the first place. "You're right," I said quietly. "I do have to choose." The lobby fell into absolute silence. Even the soft Christmas music seemed to fade as everyone waited for my decision. Margaret stood with her arms crossed, confident in her ultimatum. Harold nodded approvingly beside her, certain that blood would prove thicker than water. But I was looking at Emma, remembering the day she first walked into my office for her interview. 17 years old, wearing a borrowed dress and shoes that were clearly too big, but carrying herself with quiet dignity, despite her circumstances. She had never asked for special treatment, never used her difficult situation as an excuse for anything less than excellence. I thought about Sarah, who had taken a chance on an unknown resort owner and helped me build something special from nothing. Carlos, who stayed up until midnight perfecting recipes for our Christmas menu. Every employee standing around me had chosen to be here, had chosen to believe in what we were building together. Then I looked at my parents. 5 years of silence, 5 years of building a successful business, 5 years of proving myself worthy of the Roosevelt name. And their first response upon discovering my success was to demand that I fire the employee they had assaulted. Nothing had changed. They still believed love should be conditional, that relationships were transactions, that people's worth was determined by their social status. "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the marble floor. "I do have to choose between my real family and people who are using me." Margaret smiled triumphantly. "Good. Now about this girl's immediate termination?" "Emma stays," I said firmly. "You leave." The words hit the lobby like a physical impact. Margaret's smile vanished instantly. Harold's face went through confusion, disbelief, and then rage. "What did you say?" Margaret whispered. "I said Emma stays. You leave. Security will escort you from the property, and you are banned from returning." "You cannot be serious," Harold sputtered. "We are your parents, your flesh and blood. You would choose employees over family?" I walked slowly across the lobby until I stood directly in front of them. When I spoke, my voice was calm, measured, and absolutely final. "You are not my family," I said. "You are people who share my DNA. Family is what you build with people who love you unconditionally, who support you through failures as well as successes, who treat others with kindness and respect." I gestured toward my employees. "These people are my family. They've stood by me, worked beside me, helped me become someone I'm proud to be. You spent 32 years telling me I wasn't good enough to be your son. They spent 3 years proving I was good enough to be their friend. Margaret's composure cracked completely. After everything we've done for you, we paid for your education, we provided for you. You provided for me the same way someone provides for a pet, I replied. Food, shelter, basic necessities, but you never provided what a child actually needs. Unconditional love acceptance, the security of knowing you're valued for who you are, not what you achieve. Harold stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. This is ridiculous. You're being manipulated by people who work for you. Of course they're nice to you. You sign their paychecks. Emma stepped forward, her voice stronger than I had heard it all day. Sir, with respect, I've been offered better-paying jobs at other resorts. I stay here because Duke treats us like human beings. Because he cares about our families, our dreams, our futures. Not because of money. The day Emma interviewed here, I said to my parents, she was supporting her disabled mother on part-time minimum wage jobs while finishing high school. I could have hired someone with more experience, someone who didn't need help with college tuition or family medical bills. But Emma had something no amount of experience can teach: character. Sarah joined us. When I was hired as manager, I was a single mother with no formal hotel training. Duke invested in my education, supported my career growth, and never once made me feel like I owed him anything beyond honest work. Carlos stepped forward as well. My daughter needed surgery that insurance wouldn't cover. Duke paid the bills and told me the only payment he wanted was for me to be the best father I could be. One by one, my employees shared their stories. Not just of financial help, but of respect, dignity, opportunities for growth. They painted a picture of a workplace built on mutual support and genuine care. Margaret listened with growing fury. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're so desperate for approval that you're buying friendship with these people, Andres. No, Jonathan Walsh interjected, his phone still recording. He's building loyalty through leadership. There's a difference. Walsh approached me with professional interest. Mr. Roosevelt, I came here to review your resort, but I've stumbled onto something much more interesting. Can you tell me about your management philosophy? Before I could answer, Harold erupted. Management philosophy? He's destroying the family reputation? Duke, if you don't reconsider this decision immediately, we'll make sure everyone knows what kind of operation you're really running here. Please do, I said calmly. Tell everyone that Aspen Ridge Resort is the kind of place where employees are treated with respect, where guests who assault staff are removed regardless of how much money they've paid, and where the owner chooses character over profit. The federal judge, who had been watching everything with professional interest, spoke up. For what it's worth, I've been a guest at dozens of luxury resorts, and I've never seen an owner who was more involved in protecting his staff. Your son's response to this situation shows exceptional leadership. Margaret whirled on the judge. Nobody asked for your opinion. This is a family matter. Actually, the news reporter interjected, when you assaulted a hotel employee on camera, it became a matter of public interest. We'll be leading tonight's broadcast with this story. You can't broadcast private family conversations, Harold demanded. Walsh lowered his phone and smiled. Actually, everything that happened in this lobby is fair game. Public establishment, public behavior, public consequences. And I have to say, this is going to make a fascinating addition to my resort review. Margaret looked around the lobby wildly, taking in the faces of guests who had witnessed everything, the news camera that had captured her assault on Emma, the employees standing firmly beside me, the reporters who were documenting every word. This is all wrong, she said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. Duke, you're making a terrible mistake. These people don't really care about you. When the money runs out, they'll abandon you. But we're family. We'll always be family. You're right about one thing, I said quietly. When this resort fails, when my money runs out, When I'm no longer successful, some of these people might leave. But they'll leave with dignity, with gratitude for the time we shared, and with respect for what we built together. I paused, looking directly into her eyes. But you've already proven that your love disappears the moment I fail to meet your standards. 5 years ago, when I was struggling, you told me I was dead to you. These people stand beside me during struggles, celebrate with me during successes, and treat me like family regardless of my achievements. Emma stepped closer to me, her loyalty clear, despite the red mark still visible on her cheek. Duke has never made any of us feel like we have to earn his respect. He gives it freely and expects the same in return. That's exactly the problem, Margaret shrieked. Respect should be earned. These people work for you. They should know their place. The words hung in the air like poison. Around the lobby, I could see guests and staff reacting with shock and disgust. The news camera captured Margaret's outburst in high definition. Harold tried to recover the situation. What my wife means is that there should be appropriate professional boundaries between management and staff. No, I said firmly. What she means is exactly what she said. She believes that people should know their place, that respect is something that flows only upward from lower status to higher status, that money and social position determine human worth. I walked back toward my parents, my voice remaining calm despite the anger building inside me. That's the lesson you taught me growing up. Know your place. Earn respect through achievement. Love is conditional on meeting expectations. I learned those lessons well. Good, Margaret said. Then act like it, fire this insolent girl, and remember your obligations to family. I did learn those lessons, I continued. And then I learned something else. I learned that the kind of people worth knowing don't need to be reminded of their place because they treat everyone with dignity. I learned that respect freely given creates loyalty that can't be purchased. And I learned that unconditional love exists, but only when you stop trying to extract it from people who don't know how to give it. The final pieces clicked into place. I understood now why this confrontation had to happen, why my parents had to appear in my lobby on Christmas Eve, why they had to assault my employee on camera in front of reporters and guests. This isn't about Emma, I realized aloud. This isn't even about me. This is about power. You can't stand that I built something successful without your approval, that I've surrounded myself with people who value character over status, that I've created a life where your opinions don't matter. Harold's face darkened. Your opinions don't matter either. You think these employees would choose you over their own interests if it came down to it? You think this girl would risk her job to defend you? Before I could respond, Emma stepped forward. Actually, sir, I would. Duke has been like family to me for 3 years. Real family. The kind that doesn't disappear when things get difficult. So would I, Sarah added. And me, Carlos said firmly. One by one, my employees voiced their support. Not because they had to, not because their jobs depended on it, but because they chose to. Because we had built something together based on mutual respect and genuine care. Margaret looked around the lobby one final time, her face cycling through rage, disbelief, and something that might have been grief. Fine, she said coldly. If this is your choice, then live with the consequences. But don't come crawling back to us when these people show their true colors. Don't expect forgiveness when you realize what you've given up. I won't, I said simply, because I'm not giving anything up. I'm choosing what I want to keep. Harold shook his head sadly. You've changed, Duke. Success has made you cruel. The son we raised would never abandon his family for strangers. You're right, I agreed. The son you raised was so desperate for your approval that he would have sacrificed his principles, his employees, and his integrity to earn a few moments of conditional love. That man died in your basement 5 years ago. I'm someone else now. Margaret made one final attempt. Duke, please. We can work this out privately. Family forgives family. We just need to discuss reasonable boundaries for your relationship with employees. The boundary is simple, I replied. Anyone who mistreats my staff is no longer welcome here. Anyone who demands that I choose between family loyalty and basic human decency will find that I choose decency every time. And anyone who thinks love should be conditional on meeting their expectations will discover that I no longer accept those conditions. The lobby fell silent except for the gentle Christmas music that had played throughout the entire confrontation. Margaret and Harold stood alone in the center of the marble floor, isolated by their own choices, surrounded by people who had witnessed their behavior and found it wanting. Walsh approached them with his phone still recording. Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt, would you like to make a statement for my review of the resort? Margaret drew herself up with whatever dignity remained. We have nothing to say to you. This establishment has lost our business permanently. Actually, Walsh replied with a slight smile, I think you've given me more material than I could have hoped for. My review will be very thorough. The security guards approached quietly, professionally. Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt, we need to escort you from the property now. As my parents walked toward the exit, Margaret turned back one final time. Duke, when these people inevitably disappoint you, remember this moment. Remember what you chose to throw away. I promised. I'll remember the moment I chose dignity over dysfunction character, over genetics, and unconditional love over emotional manipulation. It'll be one of my happiest memories. The glass doors closed behind them, leaving them standing in the falling snow, outside the resort they would never enter again. The lobby felt different after my parents left. Lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had lifted and allowed the Christmas spirit to shine through. The warm glow of the tree lights, the gentle scent of pine and cinnamon, the soft holiday music. Everything seemed more vivid, more real. But before I could fully process what had just happened, the glass doors opened again. This time it was my grandmother Elizabeth Roosevelt stepping carefully through the entrance, her silver cane tapping against the marble floor. At 92, she still carried herself with the quiet dignity that had made her my sanctuary during childhood. Grandma Liz, I said, hardly believing my eyes. What are you doing here? She moved slowly across the lobby, her sharp blue eyes taking in the assembled crowd, the news camera, the employees still gathered protectively around me. A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. I was watching through the windows, she said, her voice still strong despite her age. Quite a performance your parents put on. I'm proud of you, my dear boy. I walked quickly to embrace her, feeling the familiar comfort of her lavender perfume and soft wool coat. Grandma, I had no idea you were coming for Christmas. I wanted to surprise my successful grandson, she said, patting my cheek gently. The one who built this beautiful place through hard work and kindness. The one his parents have been bragging about to their friends while pretending he doesn't exist. Margaret and Harold were visible through the glass doors, standing in the snow looking confused and angry. Elizabeth glanced in their direction and shook her head sadly. I've spent 5 years listening to them tell everyone about their successful son, who owns a luxury resort in Colorado, she continued. Meanwhile, they've also spent 5 years telling me you were ungrateful and selfish for disappearing without a word. Jonathan Walsh approached with obvious interest. Mrs. Roosevelt, I presume I'm Jonathan Walsh from Luxury Travel Weekly. I'd love to include your perspective in my review. Of course, dear, Elizabeth said graciously. But first I have something to share with my grandson. She reached into her purse and produced a thick legal envelope. Duke, I want you to know that I changed my will last year. Everything goes to you. The Connecticut estate, the trust funds, the investment portfolio, all of it. Harold's face was pressed against the glass door, clearly trying to read his mother's lips. Margaret stood beside him, gesticulating wildly, apparently demanding that he do something. Grandma, I said quietly, "You don't need to." "Oh, but I do," she interrupted. "Your parents spent 60 years believing that money was the source of power in our family. They thought controlling the inheritance meant controlling everyone's behavior. Time they learned otherwise." She turned to address the lobby, her voice carrying clearly. "My grandson built this resort through his own effort, his own vision, his own character. He didn't need family money, family connections, or family approval. He needed what I gave him as a child: unconditional love and the belief that he could become whoever he chose to be." Emma stepped forward shyly. "Ma'am, I just want you to know that Duke is the most generous, ethical boss I've ever worked for. He treats all of us like family." "Real family," Elizabeth corrected gently. "The kind that doesn't require you to earn love through achievements. I can see that in how you all stood by him when his parents demanded he choose between them and you." Sarah joined the conversation. "Mrs. Roosevelt Duke has created something special here. Not just a successful business, but a community. People don't work for him. They work with him." "That's the boy I raised," Elizabeth said proudly. "I remember when he was 12 years old. He spent his allowance buying Christmas presents for the housekeeping staff at our estate. His parents were mortified, said it wasn't appropriate to treat employees like family. But Duke understood something they never did: that treating people with dignity costs nothing and returns everything." Walsh was taking notes rapidly. "This is fascinating family history. Mrs. Roosevelt, can you elaborate on the family dynamics that led to this confrontation?" Elizabeth settled into one of the comfortable lobby chairs, clearly prepared to tell the full story. "Harold and Margaret are good people in many ways, but they never understood the difference between conditional and unconditional love. They believed children should earn parental approval through achievement. Duke spent 32 years trying to meet standards that kept shifting every time he got close to them." Carlos brought Elizabeth a cup of tea, which she accepted with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, young man. That's exactly what I mean. Simple kindness offered and received gracefully." Outside, Harold was now pounding on the glass doors while Margaret stood beside him, making threatening gestures toward the security guards. The scene was almost comical in its desperation. "They're not bad people," Elizabeth continued, watching her son's tantrum. "But they confused power with love, control with care. When Duke was struggling with his weight and his failed business ventures, they saw only their own embarrassment instead of their son's pain." The federal judge, who had been quietly observing everything, approached our group. "Mrs. Roosevelt, I have to say your grandson's handling of this situation has been exemplary. In 30 years on the federal bench, I've rarely seen such grace under pressure. He learned early that dignity can't be taken away unless you surrender it," Elizabeth replied. "His parents tried to strip it from him for years, but it only made him stronger." The news reporter moved closer with her cameraman. "Mrs. Roosevelt, what message do you hope comes from this story?" Elizabeth thought carefully before answering. "That families are made, not born. That love given freely grows stronger than love demanded through guilt or obligation. And that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who make your love conditional on meeting their expectations." Walsh closed his notebook and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Mr. Roosevelt, I came here to review your resort's amenities and service. Instead, I've witnessed something extraordinary: a masterclass in leadership integrity and the true meaning of hospitality." "The review is always going to write itself," I replied. "This resort succeeds because we treat people the way we want to be treated. Today just happened to be a very public demonstration of that philosophy." "Indeed it was," Walsh agreed. "I'll be recommending Aspen Ridge Resort not just for its luxury amenities, but as an example of what hospitality looks like when it's built on genuine respect for human dignity." Emma's replacement shift arrived, allowing her to take a break, to ice her cheek, and process everything that had happened. As she prepared to leave, she stopped beside me. "Duke, I just want to say thank you. not just for standing up for me today, but for creating a place where people like me can build careers with dignity. My mother always told me that how people treat you when they don't have to tell you everything about their character. You've proven that every day for 3 years. Emma. I said seriously, you've earned every opportunity you've received here. Your character, your work ethic, your loyalty, those aren't gifts I gave you. Those are qualities you brought with you that first day you walked into my office. As Emma headed upstairs to rest, Carlos approached with news about the kitchen situation. Boss, the fire damage was minimal. We're back to full capacity for tonight's Christmas Eve dinner. The staff is actually more motivated than ever after what they witnessed today. Good, I said. Let's make sure our guests have the Christmas Eve they deserve. Elizabeth reached over and took my hand. Duke, dear, there's something else I need to tell you. Your parents have been using my money to maintain their lifestyle for the past 5 years. The country club memberships, the luxury vacations, the expensive clothes, all funded by advances on their inheritance. I looked toward the glass doors where Harold and Margaret were still arguing with security guards who were clearly explaining that they could not re-enter the building. They're going to face some difficult adjustments, Elizabeth continued. The trust fund distributions end immediately, and they'll need to find a way to support themselves that doesn't involve family money. Grandma, that seems harsh. No, dear boy, that's accountability. They've spent 60 years believing that money excuses bad behavior, that social status justifies treating others poorly. Time they learn to live like the rest of us, through their own effort and character. Walsh was preparing to leave, but he stopped to shake my hand. Mr. Roosevelt, this has been the most enlightening resort visit of my career. My review will run in next month's issue, but I'm also recommending you as a speaker for our annual Hospitality Leadership Conference. I'd be honored, I replied. One final question, Walsh said. Do you have any regrets about the choice you made today? I looked around the lobby at my employees who had stood by me, at my grandmother, who had always believed in me, at the guests who had witnessed integrity in action, at the beautiful resort we had built together through mutual respect and hard work. Only one Bonins, I said. I regret that it took me 32 years to understand that some people will never love you the way you need to be loved, and that's not your fault. It's just information about what kind of relationship is possible. Elizabeth squeezed my hand approvingly. That's wisdom that will serve you well, my dear. Outside, Harold made one final attempt to re-enter the building, but the security guards remained firm. Margaret threw what appeared to be a tantrum in the parking lot before getting into their rental car. As they drove away into the snowy Colorado evening, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the temporary satisfaction of proving them wrong, not the hollow victory of financial success, but the deep peace that comes from knowing you've chosen your values over your fears, your principles over other people's approval. Well, Elizabeth said, watching their car disappear down the mountain road, that was quite a Christmas Eve gift. Now shall we see about that dinner you mentioned? I haven't had a proper family Christmas in years. As we walked toward the dining room together, surrounded by the employees who had become my chosen family, I realized that Harold and Margaret had given me exactly what I needed. Not their love, which had always been conditional anyway, but their absence, which finally allowed room for genuine love to flourish. The Christmas tree lights twinkled behind us, and for the first time in 5 years, everything felt exactly as it should be. Christmas Eve dinner at Aspen Ridge Resort became something magical that none of us had planned. What started as a formal holiday meal for 200 guests evolved into a celebration of family chosen and born that brought together everyone whose lives had been touched by the day's extraordinary events. Elizabeth sat at the head table beside me, regaling nearby guests with stories of my childhood determination and kindness. The federal judge joined our table along with Jonathan Walsh, who had decided to extend his stay to experience the resort's full Christmas program. Duke Anskin checks Elizabeth said during the main course, "I want you to know how proud your grandfather would have been of the man you've become. He always said that character is what you do when no one important is watching. But today you showed character when everyone was watching." Emma returned for the dinner service. The redness in her cheek faded, but her confidence stronger than ever. She moved through the dining room with new authority, her experience of being defended by her boss having given her a deeper understanding of her own worth. "Mrs. Roosevelt," she said as she checked on our table, "Duke saved my life when he hired me. Not financially, though that certainly helped, but he saved who I was as a person. He taught me that respect isn't something you have to earn through subservience. It's something good people give freely." "That's exactly right, dear," Elizabeth replied. "Real leaders don't demand respect. They inspire it." Carlos emerged from the kitchen to personally present the evening's special dessert, a chocolate soufflé that he had been perfecting for weeks. "Boss," he said with a wide grin, "this one's dedicated to standing up for family, all kinds of family." The news crew had been invited to stay for dinner, and their story was already being picked up by national networks. The reporter approached our table during coffee service. "Mr. Roosevelt, we've been getting calls from other news outlets wanting to follow up on this story. You've become something of a symbol for workplace dignity and chosen family. How does that feel? I thought carefully before answering. "I hope people understand that what happened today wasn't about rejecting family or blood relationships. It was about refusing to accept that love should be conditional on meeting other people's expectations. Some families are born, some are made. And the strongest families are built on mutual respect and unconditional support." Walsh leaned forward with interest. "Speaking of which, I've had preliminary conversations with several other resort owners who want to adopt your employee-first policies. You may have started a movement in the hospitality industry." "Good," I said simply. "Business success built on the backs of broken people isn't really success. It's just exploitation with better marketing." As dinner wound down, Sarah approached with a special announcement. "Everyone, we have a surprise addition to tonight's program. Mrs. Elizabeth Roosevelt has agreed to share some family stories by the Christmas tree." We gathered in the lobby around the magnificent evergreen that had been the backdrop for the day's drama. Elizabeth settled into the same chair where she had earlier revealed the change to her will, but now the atmosphere was one of warmth and celebration. 50 years ago, she began, "My late husband and I started a Christmas tradition. Every year we would ask each family member to share something they were grateful for, something they were proud of, and something they were looking forward to. Duke, would you start us off?" I stood beside the Christmas tree where my parents had demanded my removal just hours earlier. The same lights that had illuminated their anger now cast a warm glow over faces filled with genuine affection and respect. "I'm grateful for the lesson my parents taught me today," I said, which drew surprised looks from several people. "They reminded me that the love I've built with all of you is real because it's freely given, not demanded through guilt or obligation. I'm proud that when tested, I chose dignity over convenience, character over compromise. And I'm looking forward to building even stronger relationships with the people who have chosen to be part of this family." Emma stepped forward next. "I'm grateful for a boss who protected me when I couldn't protect myself. I'm proud that I found the courage to speak up when it mattered, and I'm looking forward to using my education, which Duke made possible, to become the kind of leader who creates opportunities for others." One by one, employees and guests shared their thoughts. Sarah spoke about the pride of working for a company with genuine values. Carlos talked about his daughter's recovery and his gratitude for a workplace that treated his family crisis as a shared concern. Even the federal judge participated, expressing gratitude for witnessing leadership and integrity in action. "This has been extraordinary," Walsh said when his turn came. "I'm grateful for discovering that exceptional hospitality still exists in a world that often prioritizes profit over people. I'm proud to be documenting a story that I believe will inspire positive change in our industry. And I'm looking forward to the ripple effect this will have on how businesses think about employee relationships. Elizabeth went last, her voice strong despite her years. I'm grateful that my grandson found the courage to walk away from conditional love and build something better. I'm proud that the boy I raised to value character over status became a man who proves those values under pressure. And I'm looking forward to spending my remaining years surrounded by people who understand that family is about love, not genetics. As the evening drew to a close, Walsh pulled me aside for a final conversation. Duke, I want you to know that my review will be unlike anything I've ever written. This isn't just about luxury amenities or exceptional service. This is about what happens when business is conducted with genuine integrity. What kind of impact do you think the story will have? I asked. Honestly, I think you've started something bigger than you realize. Social media is already picking up the story. Chosen family and conditional love are trending on multiple platforms. People are sharing their own stories about choosing dignity over dysfunction, about finding real family among coworkers and friends. He showed me his phone, where hundreds of comments were pouring in on the news coverage. Stories of people who had walked away from toxic family relationships, employees whose bosses had stood up for them, individuals who had found genuine acceptance among chosen families. The hospitality industry is watching this closely, Walsh continued. Several major chains have already contacted me asking about implementing similar employee-first policies. You may have accidentally revolutionized how we think about workplace relationships. As guests began retiring to their rooms, my core staff gathered for a final debrief of the extraordinary day. We sat in a circle near the Christmas tree, the same spot where the morning's confrontation had unfolded. I want all of you to know, I said, that what happened today changed nothing about how I see you, but it changed everything about how confident I am in the relationships we've built. When my parents demanded that I choose between them and you, it wasn't really a choice. You've proven your loyalty and character over years of working together. They've proven today that their love came with conditions I could no longer meet. Emma spoke up quietly. Duke, when your mom slapped me, I was scared and hurt. But when you stood up for me, when you chose to protect me over preserving your relationship with them, I understood something important. Real family doesn't ask you to choose between them and your principles. Well, that's exactly right, Sarah added. A good parent, a good family member would have been proud of you for building this place, proud of how you treat people. They would never have asked you to compromise your values to preserve their comfort. Carlos nodded thoughtfully. My own parents taught me that family is about supporting each other's growth, not controlling each other's choices. What your parents demanded today wasn't family loyalty. It was emotional manipulation. Elizabeth, who had been listening quietly, spoke up from her chair. Duke, dear, there's something I want you to understand. Your parents' inability to love you unconditionally isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their limitations. You spent 32 years trying to earn something they were never capable of giving. But these people, she gestured around the circle, love you not because they have to, not because you pay them, but because of who you are when no one is forcing you to be anything else. That's the difference between conditional and unconditional love. As the evening finally ended and everyone prepared to head home or to their rooms, I found myself standing alone beside the Christmas tree. The lobby was quiet now. The crisis of the day resolved. The family I had chosen safely gathered around me. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, I wondered if it might be from Harold or Margaret, some attempt at reconciliation or further manipulation. Instead, it was from Brad, sending me screenshots of social media posts about the day's events. Boss, he had written, you might want to see this. Aspen Ridge family is trending. People are calling what you did choosing dignity. Bookings are up 300% for next year. But more importantly, other businesses are asking how they can create the same kind of workplace culture. I scrolled through dozens of posts. Employees at other companies sharing stories of bosses who had stood up for them. Adult children celebrating their decisions to build chosen families after toxic biological relationships. Business leaders committing to treat their staff with greater dignity and respect. But the post that meant the most was from Emma, posted just minutes ago. Today, my boss chose me over his own parents when they demanded he fire me for their bad behavior. Not because he had to, not because it was easy, but because it was right. This is what real family looks like. This is what unconditional love means. Grateful to work for a man who proves every day that character matters more than genetics. Chosen family, Aspen Ridge family. The post already had hundreds of likes and comments from people sharing their own stories of chosen family and workplace dignity. I turned off my phone and looked around the lobby one more time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to live up to the values we had defended today. But tonight, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of choices made with integrity, I felt something I had never experienced before. Complete peace with who I had become and the family I had chosen. My journey from the broken, desperate man living in my parents' basement to the confident leader standing in my own resort lobby had been long and difficult. But every struggle, every failure, every moment of doubt had led to this. A life built on mutual respect, unconditional love, and the understanding that the most important family relationships are the ones we choose to cultivate with people who see our worth without conditions. Harold and Margaret Roosevelt had given me everything I needed after all. Not their love, which had always come with strings attached, but their absence, which finally gave me room to build something better. The Christmas tree lights reflected off the marble floors, casting gentle patterns of light and shadow throughout the lobby. Tomorrow, this would be a busy hotel lobby, again filled with guests and staff, and the ordinary business of hospitality. But tonight, it was something more, a place where family had been redefined, where love had been chosen over obligation, where character had triumphed over convenience. I walked slowly toward the elevator, knowing that upstairs Elizabeth was settling into the guest suite we had prepared for her extended stay, knowing that Emma was probably calling her mother to share the day's extraordinary events, knowing that Sarah and Carlos and all the others who had stood by me were resting peacefully secure in the knowledge that their loyalty had been recognized and protected. But mostly I was thinking about the lesson that had taken me 37 years to learn that the people who are meant to be in your life will love you not in spite of your flaws, but as a complete person, worthy of respect and affection. And the people who make their love conditional on your meeting their expectations are giving you valuable information about the kind of relationship that's actually possible. Some families are born, some are made. The strongest families are built by people who choose each other every day, not because they have to, but because they want to. As I settled into my own suite high above the lobby where it all happened, I felt gratitude for the unexpected gift my parents had given me. Not reconciliation, which would have required them to change in ways they were unwilling or unable to change, but clarity, absolute perfect clarity about who belonged in my life and who had chosen to forfeit their place through their own actions. The snow continued falling outside my window, blanketing the Colorado mountains in pristine white. Below the resort slept peacefully home to guests and staff who understood that real luxury isn't about money or status, but about being treated with dignity by people who recognize your inherent worth. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to live these values, new chances to prove that business success and human decency aren't mutually exclusive. But tonight, Christmas Eve at Aspen Ridge Resort was perfect exactly as it was. Family had been chosen, love had been defined, character had been tested and proven. And for the first time in my life, I was exactly where and with whom I belonged. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your principles? What did you learn about the difference between conditional and unconditional love? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about the moments that taught you what real family means. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about choosing dignity over convenience and building the life you deserve. And please share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to walk away from relationships that require you to compromise your values. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and remember, the family that chooses you is often stronger than the family you're born into. May you find the courage to build relationships based on mutual respect and unconditional love. Wishing you and your chosen family a Christmas filled with genuine connection and the peace that comes from being valued for exactly who you are.